Greetings, and thank you so much for joining me for this evening's broadcast. I want to start by sending out a heartfelt hug to each and every one of you. It's either a comforting hug to support those who may be feeling fear and anxiety or isolation. And it's a celebratory hug for those who are experiencing a great awakening and the unity consciousness that is developing. For myself, I am a truth seeker with insatiable curiosity, so I can't even help myself but to dive in to the questions of who, why, what, where. And for me, these questions are on a universal level of exploring what the greater meaning and purpose behind this global viral event is, on a spiritual level, but also on a scientific level. As many of you know, I created an internet television network with the genre Sci-Spi, merging science and spirituality, because I am always seeking both the divine and the logic. And together they reveal answers of the most profound nature. If you tuned into my last broadcast on Thursday of last week, you would have heard my exploration of the possibilities that this global viral event is facilitating a global DNA upgrade, an intentional DNA upgrade. I shared with you how science has proven that viruses come onto our planet within the icy contents of comets. They also survive on crafts, coming back into our atmosphere on crafts. I also explored the idea of panspermia, where the DNA of humanity was planted like seeds in the clay of the earth, and then over time fertilized. It's so interesting how in many traditions they talk about seeds being sown. And for those whose seeds are sown, they will grow and flourish. It also brought to mind the collective consciousness grid, or how our planet is literally a spherical web of consciousness, and how each and every one of us are like a spherical web of consciousness. And this becomes the fabric of our world, or the fabric of our lives, and a medium upon which seeds can be sown or woven into this web. So if we think of panspermia, and that seeds were woven into the fabric of our planet, and ultimately, these seeds were woven into the web of our own individual and collective consciousness. We can then ponder how these seeds are fertilized. We know that seeds grow and flourish much better when they are fertilized. So let's picture this, and this is all very significant for our topic tonight, which is all about our DNA response to this global viral event. Of course, DNA is directly related to our consciousness, so a shift in DNA results in a shift in consciousness. So let's picture this, that through panspermia, seeds are planted into the clay of the earth, into the waters and oceans. They are planted, but then they must be fertilized over time in order to grow and flourish. So let's imagine that these seeds were planted by advanced races. According to the Urantia book, 6 races planted seeds on planet Earth, and then when the planet was ready to be incarnated, these seeds began to grow. They say, they being the advanced group of extracelestial beings that the authors were channeling, they say that these 6 seeds reflected the colors of the rainbow, or the colors of our chakras, or the rays of creation that define our reality. And so that would mean red, yellow, green, sky blue, and indigo blue. And they say the seventh race, the violet race, came in later, at the time when it was necessary to make a great leap in consciousness. They say it was the time when Adam and Eve came in. They came in as an upgrade to the current human species on the planet. And so we go back to this idea that these 6 seeds were planted, and the Urantia book says that over time, 4 survived, like survival of the fittest. And that would be the red race, the yellow race, the blue bloods, and then the dark indigo blue being the African American races. The orange and green races did not survive, and they either died out or were merged with the races that did survive. And let's think about what we know about our own human history and the emergence of primitive beings millions of years ago. So as these seeds were planted around the world, different types of evolution took place within the waters and on the land. The closest representation to humans today would of course be the primate species. Although some say notably that the lemur was actually a more direct descendant, and I love the connection with the word lemur and Lemuria as having been one of the first continents on the planet to have more intelligent and evolved beings according to the ancient scriptures and channeled material. And so you have these primates walking the planet for hundreds of thousands of years, evolving very slowly. And then, 2 million years ago, there is a leap in consciousness. And you might recall the discovery of a skull they named Lucy, saying that Lucy was actually the leap in consciousness, and that she became the mother of this new era of upright humans, a more advanced race. And furthermore, through fossil evidence, discovering that there was a global viral event 2 million years ago that may have resulted in this major evolutionary upgrade of being able to walk upright. It's so interesting. I learned that there was a certain bug species that, in response to a viral event that affected this particular species, they grew wings and were able to fly. It's similar to us being able to walk upright. These evolutionary adaptations are apparently a response to global viral events that affect multiple species on the planet at the time. And so that goes back to this idea of fertilizing the seeds. And wouldn't it be the advanced races who planted the seeds here to begin with, who would be then fertilizing them? It's like who fertilizes their crops, but the farmers who planted the seeds. And they fertilize the seeds in order so that they grow and flourish. They don't remain stagnant within a limited ability to only grow to a certain height, or maybe not even survive at all. So let's imagine then that over a period of time, these advanced races fertilize the human race. And maybe they do so by sending viruses to us within the icy inner core of comets. And it also seems that they do it at timed intervals that may have everything to do with the cycle of the yugas, where our solar system travels on this elliptical path On one end, a golden age of enlightenment at the peak of 12,500 years, and at the other end, a dark ages at the peak of another 12,500 years. From the peak of the dark ages, the solar system begins on an ascending arc, an ascension back towards another golden age of enlightenment. And then, with this golden age of enlightenment representing an evolutionary advancement, an enlightenment which offers those who are ready for an ascension, who are ready to ascend into a higher dimensional experiences because they have completed their 3D round of incarnations, they can get off the wheel. And this is what Buddhism talks about, getting off the wheel of suffering and separation. Those who aren't ready to ascend or become enlightened may choose then to take another round on the wheel, and they then proceed on the descending arc, moving back into the dark ages. This cycle of the yugas represents the solar system's proximity or alignment with the center of the Milky Way galaxies, and also a trifecta of central suns sending highly charged particles or photons onto the planet. Our own central sun being one, the central sun of the Cygnus constellation being 2, and the central sun Alcyone of the Pleiades being 3. This trifecta of encoded photons, highly charged photons, containing information bombarding our planet at this time, to raise our frequency, to elevate our consciousness. And so I bring this up because I talked about fertilizing at different intervals of time, and apparently this happens in many different ways. The cycle of the yugas is a 25,000 year cycle. So every 25,000 years, a being who has completed its elliptical cycle has the opportunity to get off the wheel. And in the Law of One book, they would call this a harvest. And a harvest is for those whose seeds have been sown. Going back to the reference to the DNA being the seeds that are sown or woven into the fabric of a human being, or even into the fabric of a world, the web of consciousness. And then, according to the Law of One, every 75,000 years, or 3 rounds on the wheel, there is a major harvest. So rather than the opportunity for individuals to get off the wheel, this is an opportunity for an entire planet to get off the wheel. And so many of us are aware that at this time, Mother Earth herself is moving in to a higher dimensional experience. Mother Earth is seeking her ascension, and because she dearly loves her children, she wants as many of her children to go along with her as possible. This is an opportunity for a planetary ascension, which would be a global event. Isn't it interesting that right now, when many believe that we are going through an ascension process, and at the peak of the 75,000 year cycle that Law of One book reveals as a major harvest, that there would be a global event? What if it is a fertilization, a virus coming in, sent here by advanced star races interested in the evolution of humanity, interested in fertilizing the seeds that they planted, and this virus arrives and affects the entire globe. And as I said in my last broadcast, this is a virus that affects everyone who is exposed to it. It's just the degree to which they are affected. But science has shown that viruses always cause adaptations to the genome, and not just the human genome, but the genome of all species who are affected by it. It is an evolutionary upgrade to the human genome as an adaptation to this viral infection. And so this is one way of fertilizing the seeds. This is one way of sowing the seeds into the web of consciousness, or weaving them into the fabric. We know that this has been done in other ways throughout human history. Based on the Sumerian clay tablets, beings came here from the 12th planet of Nibiru, and they were called the Anunnaki. And these texts reveal that the Anunnaki interbred with the humans here on planet Earth, specifically a being named Enki and his sister Ninmah. Through interbreeding and also genetic experimentation, they were able to upgrade the primitive beings on the planet to a more advanced species who were able to work in the gold mines and able to work where? In the gardens where Adam and Eve first came into being as an upgraded species. Genetic experimentation, they were able to upgrade the primitive beings on the planet to a more advanced species who were able to work in the gold mines and able to work where? In the gardens where Adam and Eve first came into being as an upgraded version of humanity, the violet race, according to the Urantia book, the seventh ray. And so this is one way of fertilizing the seeds through interbreeding and hybridization programs, which we are very well aware of as an ongoing extraterrestrial program to merge DNA, and maybe by doing so, upgrading the species involved in an effort to create designer races that have been designed specifically by intermixing DNA. Is this a designer virus being sent to us to improve our human design by compelling the genome to advance through adaptations? Now back to the cycle of 75,000 years. We know through scientific research and fossil evidence that 75,000 years ago there was another global viral event that significantly reduced the population, but those who survived had major evolutionary upgrades of writing and communicating in symbolic language. Maybe two things happening here: a culling of the population, an intentional reduction of the world population in the interest of resources, just like we have open season on certain animal populations who may be getting out of control and consuming too many resources, as well as offering an evolutionary advancement to those who survive. And while reducing the population may seem like a harsh way of dealing with humanity, it may also offer a way out for those who aren't ready to evolve yet, who aren't done learning through experiences at the level of evolution they are in. These evolutionary advancements represent moving through dimensional levels, possibly 7 levels within each dimension, with 8 being the gateway out. Some have also suggested 12 levels, with 13 being the gateway out. I'm more inclined to believe there are 12 levels within each dimension, and 13 is the gateway out. In Theosophy, it says that as an eternal soul, we are projecting 12 aspects of our personality into each of 12 dimensions, and that therefore we have 144 soul extensions, incarnations that are unfolding all at once in time and space, all being projected by our eternal soul, who is standing at the center of our creation as the only real aspect of ourself in the only real realm. This also references the zodiac chart, that we may be standing in the center of our zodiac chart, projecting 12 aspects of our personality all around us in each of the different dimensions. When we have completed our incarnations in each of the 12 aspects, we can spiral into the center, which has been referred to as Ophiuchus, the gatekeeper, or the snake dancer, or snake bearer, who has tamed his Kundalini energy, the snake, and can now walk through the gate of ascension into the next dimension. And so you see at different times throughout your own individual journey and throughout the collective journey of the whole, there are timelines in which leaps of consciousness are made. And each of these leaps represents a dimensional shift where you have the opportunity to perceive the reality from a higher dimensional perspective. You can see beyond the spectrum of the dimension that you have been in. But when these cycles come around, whether the timeline represents proximity and alignment with the center of the Milky Way galaxy, or the timeline represents a fertilizing of humanity to upgrade the DNA, there is an opportunity for evolutionary advancement. And we as humans, having free will, can make that free will choice. And it may not even be on a totally conscious level. It may even be on a subconscious level. But our soul is making a choice to evolve and shift into the next dimension, or a choice to take another round on the 3D wheel because we are not done learning by dwelling in the shadows or dwelling in a reality of duality. But those who are done learning through duality or separation and suffering and are ready to learn through unity, health, vitality, peace, and harmony, they have the opportunity to do so during these different timelines. So while some of that was a repetition of what I discussed on last week's show, I wanted to offer a recap because I have a different spin on things for this broadcast. So I enjoy reading advanced material of a channeled nature, and right now am involved in reading a book that was channeled through a higher frequency, and lo and behold, I come across a section about comets and the purpose of comets. Like I was saying earlier, science has shown that viruses can come onto our planet in the icy core of comets. And on an episode of Ancient Aliens, I saw how Giorgio went to Whistler in Canada with a retired NASA scientist who was researching the existence of life within these frozen glaciers. And they were implying how viruses could come in from off-planet in the icy core of comets. Now this book I am reading talks all about how planet Earth has reached a point where it is shifting on its axis and it is going through a major evolutionary upgrade. It confirms in many ways, both scientific and spiritual, this concept of ascension, the opportunity for us as conscious beings to expand our consciousness into the next dimension, to see beyond the 3D spectrum and perceive a higher dimensional reality, which is an enhancement on the reality we have been experiencing. I call this show Transcend the Matrix because it is a reference to breaking out of the 3D matrix, which is like a cube. It's like we have been trapped in this box or this cube, and many of us are ready to break out of it. Are you ready to break out of the 3D matrix, or have you already expanded your consciousness? Stay tuned as we come back in the second half hour and talk about breathing the air of freedom. It's time to dive back in to the limitless and infinite as we transcend the matrix of limitations and dogma, as we reveal the truth about who we are, where we came from, why we're here, and where we're going. Let's dive back into the infinite sea of pure consciousness. Thank you for coming back for the second half hour as we dive back in to the exploration of the effects of this evolutionary virus and also the effects of being trapped within the 3D matrix. Many of us feel suffocated within this cube, which brings another interesting development of this global viral event that literally affects the respiratory system, making people feel suffocated. This book I am reading talks about the air of this planet suffocating the humans upon it. And only if we can break free of the cube we are trapped in can we breathe the air of freedom. And that reminded me of being trapped in a cage, like a bird. Being trapped in this cage, it's like the wings of this bird have been clipped so that it cannot fly, so that it cannot escape this cage that it's been trapped within. And so while this bird can still sing, it cannot fly and spread its wings. It has been trapped by humans who believe they have some dominion over this animal. We trap animals in cages all the time, and it sickens me to see animals in cages, even horses in stalls, dogs and cats in cages, trapped by humans who believe they have dominion over them. Well, maybe we as humans have been trapped in this 3D cube by beings who believe they have dominion over us, clipping our wings so we cannot spread our wings and fly, so that we cannot break out of our cage and discover the limitlessness beyond it, trying to prevent us from transcending the matrix for their own selfish interests. Just like the bird trapped in the cage, and the owner finds amusement in having this singing bird. Are we an amusement to some beings who are in control of our lives, keeping us trapped because they believe they have dominion over us? And the bird in the cage is dependent on this human to feed it. It is totally dependent on this human for its survival. It has clipped the wings of this bird, trapped it in a cage so it cannot fly, and made this bird dependent on it for its mere survival. Have we become dependent on beings who believe they have dominion over us for our mere survival, only giving us food to survive if we follow the guidelines that they have written into society? If we do not fall within society's expectations or guidelines, we cannot get food to survive. We find ourselves homeless, without the food and the supplies that we need to survive. And look at the homeless problem on the planet right now. Out of control. Something has gone terribly wrong. Those who don't fall within society's expectations go homeless and hungry, while the majority of the population has more than enough with the elite hoarding most of the wealth. But this hoarding of resources to the detriment of many. I understand there are advanced species who say that we haven't even moved out of a population 0 status yet, and that we cannot reach population 1 status until everyone on our planet has food and shelter. This literally means that until we care for each and every one of our brothers and sisters on this planet, we are a less evolved species. It's time for an evolutionary upgrade, wouldn't you agree? And so what does it take to get off of this wheel? What does it take in order to make the shift into a higher dimension? It's really as simple as raising the love, light, frequency, or in more simpler terms, being kind and compassionate, engaging in thoughts, words, and actions that elevate the consciousness of yourself and others. And the key is simply love. Those who love freely and openly in service to others, in selfless service to the light, those who have chosen the light of love will ascend and evolve out of the darkness and step into the light. Evolve out of the darkness of the shadows of drama and disillusion and step into the light of peace, harmony, and clarity. To step out of the darkness of separation and into the light of unity. What do you choose? Are you ready to step out of the drama and into the divine? Are you ready to step out of the darkness and into the light? What do you choose? There is no judgment. Many are still finding the lessons within the drama and the shadows and the separation to be very valuable for their soul's growth. Others are seeking more peace and harmony and joy and unity. And this is where the split takes place between those choosing to stay in 3D and those wishing to expand their consciousness into 5D. And I believe that 4D is the astral realm, the realm of choice, where the soul makes a free will choice to serve the shadows or to selflessly serve the light. You may even say the split between those who are interested in service to self and those who are selflessly serving. The service to self population only interested in selfish desires, serving the self by being attached, and those who practice service to self by hoarding all of the resources and wishing to control and have power over the masses. And so now that we've made it clear that there are different timelines within which humanity has the opportunity to ascend and evolve, and there are different means by which this ascension or evolvement takes place, by a fertilizing of the seeds in different ways. And who is doing the fertilizing but those who planted the seeds to begin with? These advanced star races who are our star ancestors, whose DNA is woven into the fabric of our beings. And so specific to this global viral event, these advanced races may have sent this virus to planet Earth within the icy core of a comet, knowing that it would create an adaptation in the human genome that would be an evolutionary advancement. So that brings me to the topic of comets. And so, lo and behold, I come to discover a comet named Comet C/2019, also known as Atlas. I thought to myself, how interesting. Comet C/2019 sounded a lot like COVID-19. Anyways, this Atlas comet will come closest to the Earth on May 23rd, 2020. But its effect on the consciousness of planet Earth, or on the DNA of the collective consciousness, can be happening long before it reaches its closest contact with the Earth. It made me interested also in the definition of Atlas, since this comet is called Atlas, and it stands for strength and endurance, or heavy burdens, or bearer of the sky. Titan, responsible for bearing the weight of the heavens on his shoulders. Interestingly enough, it also goes on to say that this Titan holds the heavens in the far west edge of the world of Hesperides, land of the female deities who are all singing beautifully. Doesn't that seem to have a reference to this era of the divine feminine energy? It's also very symbolic, and the meaning is within the symbology. The greater meaning for us individually and collectively. And so this book I am reading talks about how the year 1986 was a year of reform and awakening, and how the comet Halley caused humanity to gain much, and that natural calamities should not be accepted as the effect of the comet. Its effect will rather be on the consciousness. And then they go on to talk about the effects of comets and say, their mission is to carry energy pores from plan to plan by their energy powers. These pores cause the fields through which they pass to become verdant. These pores that are sown are transferred with the assistance of the mechanism of influences to friends who have gained cosmic consciousness. It says the most powerful pores of your mediumic medium were sown to your planet by the comet Comet, and it changed 2 orbits as a necessity of the plan. And the plan they're talking about is the divine plan. After the date of the comet Comet, our planet awakened more quickly with the effects of these cosmic currents. Furthermore, that the energy pores that are carried by the comets collect the knowledge on every field by the powerful vibration you see on their tails, and they sow them in necessary fields. This is the reason of the extraordinary situations taking place in the years when the comets are seen. The knowledge energies of these comets are sown in certain durations. Comet is an overture of your cosmic century. There are still millions of comets that could not be conveyed to your planet yet. Your planet will, in future, attract them one by one to your medium through the consciousness progresses it makes, and thus will make brand new discoveries. I was inspired to check out other comets, and I came across Comet Enki, which I just couldn't help but relate to this being who apparently came in from Anunnaki, from the 12th planet Nibiru, at a time when we experienced a major DNA upgrade, and his name was Enki. And this comet's name is Enki. And it says that this comet orbits the sun every 3.3 years. 3.3 or 33? A divine number. And by the way, the number of the vertebrae that run along our spine, or our line of Kundalini energy, where all of our energy centers are housed. And within each energy center, a different type of consciousness. My research shows that the comet Enki will be in closest proximity to planet Earth on June 25th, 2020. Isn't it interesting that this being Enki, who was responsible for upgrading the DNA of the human species on the planet at the time that he arrived, that this comet Enki may possibly have the effect of upgrading the human genome at the time that it arrives. And so let's look at some other comets, like this comet, Ikayu-seki, that appeared in 1965. What happened in 1965? The start of the Vietnam War. Some 3,500 U.S. Marines arrive in South Vietnam as the first combat troops in Vietnam. And what about this comet BL, recorded in 1772, when a significant shift in slavery took place after a court case called Somerset versus Stewart, which found that slavery is unsupported by English common law, encouraging an abolitionist movement. And what of this comet Hyakutake, which came closest to planet Earth in March of 1996? What happened in 1996 but Operation Desert Strike? What was Operation Desert Strike? The 1996 cruise missile strikes on Iraq, codenamed Operation Desert Strikes. They were joint United States Navy Air Force strikes conducted on September 3rd against air defense targets in southern Iraq in response to an Iraqi offensive in the Kurdish Civil War. In August of 1996, the Iraqi military, in response to Saddam Hussein's orders, launched its biggest offensive since 1991 against the city of Erbil in Iraq, Kurdistan, to defuse the Kurdish civil war between the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan and Kurdistan Democratic Party. This attack stoked American fears that the Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein intended to launch a genocidal campaign against the Kurds, similar to the campaigns of 1988 and 1991. It also placed Saddam in clear violation of United Nations Security Council Resolution 688 forbidding repression of Iraq's ethnic minorities. Now, why did I take the time to read all of that to you? Is because it occurred to me that this city is located in northern Iraq, and I have been referencing the Sumerian clay tablets, which talk about a time when humans experienced a major DNA upgrade in Mesopotamia, in northern Iraq. Some have said there may be a Stargate there, and that's really what the military leaders are protecting or defending, or hijacking for their own purposes. It seems ironic that Saddam would have been planning a genocide in a place where the genetics had been upgraded thousands of years before. Or was this possibly a genocide of this genetically superior people in this region? It reminds me of Hitler's genocide, where he claimed to be sowing the seeds of an Aryan race and destroying a genetically inferior race? Or maybe what he was actually doing was destroying a genetically superior race because they were a threat. Sometimes those in positions of power like to believe that they are superior, and they are threatened by superior races that begin to grow and flourish on the earth. They would prefer to keep humanity suppressed, with their wings clipped like the bird in the cage. Well, I say it's time to open the door of the cage that humanity has been trapped in, so that the masses can spread their wings and fly, so that they can be given an opportunity to awaken by transcending the matrix, and so that they can choose to ascend if they wish and soar into the next dimension. I believe that our galactic brothers and sisters who seeded our DNA on this planet have created this global viral event by sending viruses here in the icy core of the Comet Atlas to create an adaptation in the human genome for our own evolutionary advancement. And with this advancement, we can become genetically superior This will advance our skills and abilities and allow us to spread our wings and soar. With our new level of advanced conscious awareness, we can break out of the cube and declare our sovereignty. We can rise up and overthrow those who believe that they are superior to the masses, the elite who believe that we are a subspecies, the elite who think it's fine to lock us in a cage and feed us only if we comply with society's standards. For those who feel their wings have been clipped by those in charge, maybe this evolutionary advancement helps to restore our wings, just like the bug I was telling you about, who after contracting a viral infection literally grew wings so it could fly. The gates of ascension have been opened, my friends. Now is the time, and this is the way. A global event shifting us into a higher dimensional consciousness. Embrace this time as an opportunity to make evolutionary advancements in your own lives, reflecting on your lives, observing that which is conducive to your well-being and the well-being of others, and that which is not. Letting go of that which no longer serves and embracing that which does. Moving out of selfish interests and into selfless service. And of course, spending time with your loved ones, those whom you love and cherish, and spending time with your brothers and sisters in your own communities, and reaching out online to all of your brothers and sisters across the entire planet in a spirit of unity consciousness. Open your heart and radiate love. Express self-love and love for others. In the spirit of kindness and compassion, open your hearts and ask, what can I do to inspire and empower others at this time? Being in the service of love is the highest trait that humanity can possess at this time. Love thyself, love thy neighbor, love humanity, and expand your love into the cosmos. We are cosmic citizens, and we can send our love and light to our star ancestors who are our family. We are part of a greater galactic family, and the more that we can raise our love light frequency, the more that we can achieve an evolutionary advancement and resonate at a higher frequency, the closer we come to communicating with our galactic brothers and sisters, the more that we open our realm for them to materialize and walk amongst us. And that includes our inner earth families as well. The ancient Lemurians and Atlanteans and even the Hyperboreans who escaped into the inner earth at the time of the Great Flood. They were an advanced species at that time. And there are other advanced species within the inner earth crystalline matrix. And as soon as we raise the vibration on the surface of our planet, they can ascend and our galactic families can descend, and we can all walk amongst each other as one big happy family, holding hands in love, peace, and unity. And so be it, and so it is. Amen and namaste. I love each and every one of you dearly, and I greatly appreciate you tuning in. I invite you to visit my website at SuzanneRossWellness.com to engage in ascension meditations and to enroll in a session where I can assist you in elevating your consciousness and stepping into your divine purpose on your mission to serve humanity in your own unique way at this time. Each of us has come here with our own unique mission, and once it is revealed, we can step into our power and be all that we can be in service to humanity, with love and many blessings. I'd like to share this description of the divine plan from the Urantia book. There is in the mind of God a plan which embraces every creature of all of his vast domains, and this plan is an eternal purpose of boundless opportunity, unlimited progress, and endless life. And the infinite treasures of such a matchless career are yours for the striving. The goal of eternity is ahead. The adventure of divinity attainment lies before you. The race for perfection is on. Whosoever will may enter, and certain victory will crown the efforts of every human being who will run the race of faith and trust, depending on the guidance of that good spirit of the eternal child, which so freely has been poured out upon all flesh. So beautifully expressed. You'll want to stay tuned for the second hour because I interview Erich von Daniken, a living legend who explores the possibilities of our alien ancestors sowing their seeds on our planet, and Mary Rodwell, who offers a description of the new human. We'll be right back. Stay tuned for the second hour of Transcend the Matrix as we take a deeper dive into the cosmos, exploring galactic realms and parallel universes. You won't want to miss a moment of this journey through time, space, and beyond. Greetings and welcome back to the second hour. Thank you so much for returning. And I am delighted to offer an amazing interview that I had with Erich von Daniken. I couldn't think of a better interview to share with you in this second hour, being that he is the creator of the concept of our ancient alien ancestors. It was such an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to talk to this living legend, Erich von Daniken. I'm your host, Suzanne Ross, and I am here with the living legend, Erich von Daniken, best-selling author of over 40 books, has sold over 75 million copies worldwide, started writing in the 60s. Really, and your main goal has been to bring the story to life of ancient Sumer.
Well, it all started with Chariots of the Gods.
Yes, it certainly
did. In 1968. And Chariots of the Gods was my first book. And there I asked the question, have we been visited from outer space? Have our ancestors some thousands of years ago had visits from outer space? That was the beginning of everything.
Yes, I love your book, Chariots of the Gods, and have read it and listened to it multiple times. And so you sort of picked up on what the cuneiform text, the story that they were being told, and translated that into the Chariots of the Gods, correct?
Yes and no. I mean, there are not only cuneiform texts. Cuneiform are from Old Sumerian. But we have texts from Old India, we have texts from old religious sources, like including the Bible, etc. And in many of these texts, they speak about visitors from outer space. Now, let me clear.
Okay.
I'm a believer in God. I am a figure who still pray every evening. But I was educated as a Catholic in Switzerland. I was for 6 years in a boarding school led by Jesuits. And there we had to make translations already from one language, Latin, to the next language, Greek, of these old texts. Now, as a young man, a deep believer in God, I had some ideas, what is God? at least this figure or whatever, the spirit God, must have had some minimum qualities. For example, God makes no mistakes. Or God would never need a vehicle in which to move around from point A to point B because God is all over. Or God is out of time. God does not need to make an experiment, but then he has to wait what the result is. He knows it before. So that was my ideas as a boy. Then I read the Bible, we translated the Bible, and I realized in the Bible we have a God who descends on the holy mountain with smoke, fire, trembling, loud noise. The mountain was glowing like a furnace, etc. So all of a sudden I had doubts in my own education. What are they talking about? My God doesn't need a vehicle which descends with smoke and fire and trembling and loud noise. Or you read the book of Ezekiel in the Bible. Ezekiel describes how a chariot comes down from the sky. He describes the wheel, he describes the wings, he describes the legs. So all this is technology. I simply had doubts in my own Catholic education, and I wanted to find out if other communities in antiquity have similar stories than we have, we Christians. That was the beginning of cuneiform and all the other stuff later. So.
Yes. And then in the India Mahabharata, the Vimanas. So how did you come into the Mahabharata, and what was your translation of that?
After Chariots of the Gods, I had a lot of contacts worldwide. I had speeches at some universities in Madras, in India, and there I came together with Professor Dr. Kanjilal, who was a brilliant Sanskrit expert. And he told me about the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata we have many books, and the fifth book is called Mausala Purva. Well, in the German expression they say Mausala Purva. And there they clearly describe cities on the firmament. They make a difference between firmament and heaven. Heaven is a place of happiness after that. Firmament is the place over us. And they see 3 cities surrounding the planet. They describe the 3 cities in different colors. And all of a sudden, from one of these cities, smaller vehicles have come down, and these smaller vehicles are called Vimanas. Now, one of the young men who were taken up with the Vimana up to the big city, we know his name is Arjuna. He even learned the language of these extraterrestrials, and once he was back on Earth, he described what he saw, and that's what we read in this 5th book, in the Mausala Purva. So we had definitely visitors from outer space, and this is handed down in many religious texts, not only in India, not only in the Bible. For example, the Ethiopian community has the oldest book, which is the Book of the Kings. It's called the Kebra Negest. And there you read that King Solomon, we know all King Solomon, he had a flying machine, which he received from his God because of his violence. It is even described how he uses his flying machine. He was in love with the Queen of Sheba. The Queen of Sheba is in today's Ethiopia. That's a few thousand kilometers away from Jerusalem. So King Solomon visited her, a beloved girl, with the flying machine. So all this is handed down in the books, and that's my specialty.
Yes, and the flying carpets, then.
Of course.
Yes, absolutely. Gilgamesh. So can you expand on who was Gilgamesh in this tale of Gilgamesh?
Gilgamesh is a Sumerian tale. It starts from Sumeria. Later the Babylonians took it over too. Gilgamesh was obviously a king of the city of Uruk, according to the Gilgamesh epic. It was found in cuneiform tablets in a large library of the king of Assurbanipal II in Uruk, which was an old city. And there we read in the Gilgamesh story that Gilgamesh was taken up into the sky again. He was flying over the earth, and the being who brings him up always say to Gilgamesh, "Human, look down to earth. What do you see?" And as higher they came, Gilgamesh describes how the earth looks. Then finally they are very high, and he says, and the earth looked like a bull, and the gigantic ocean just like a little sea. So he is over the planet. He describes what happened. Gilgamesh also is looking for the tree of life. He wants to be immortal, but he doesn't find it. Finally, he dies.
And so, of course, I want to talk about Nibiru and who these beings were that came from that 12th planet as described in the cuneiform texts. So who were these and why did they come?
We have no idea where they come from. But we know for sure they come from another solar system. Not from our planet. Not, for example, from Atlantis. Not, for example, time traveler. Because in the past we had discussions, humans were discussing with them. They asked them, where do you come from? And they always pointed to the sky, to the heaven. They said, we come from that, and they used the name. But the name means nothing to us. It's not our solar system. None of them said, we are coming from Atlantis, or we are coming from Lemuria, or we are time travelers, we come from your own planet. They always came from somewhere. Now from where? Which home planet? Which solar system? With what technology? How far away? We have no idea. But we simply know they were here, and before they left the planet Earth again, they promised to return in a far future. And this promise of the returning of the God has become part of every ancient culture. You know, some roughly 400 years ago, Columbus visited as the first, so he came to Central America. The natives believed that Columbus was the long-awaited God. Or Francisco Pizarro. Pizarro was the Spanish conqueror who came first to Peru. The natives in Peru, the Inca, they fell down on their knees and they believed he was the long-awaited God. Of course, Pizarro was not the God, but the natives believed it. The same thing in Central America. Hernando Cortes, another Spanish conqueror, came to Moctezuma. Moctezuma was the ruler of the Aztecs here in Central America. Even the ruler believed that Hernando Cortes is the long-awaited God who finally returns. Or far away in the South Sea, we have the British James Cook, Captain James Cook. He was the first who visited Hawaii. The natives fell down on their knees. They believed, finally, the long-awaited God has returned. So this idea of somebody is returning is not a Christian invention. It existed long before Christianity. And what do we have today? I'm educated as a Catholic. We Christians, we believe that Jesus will return. But the Muslim society believes that the Mahdi will return. Every Buddhist believes that Buddha will return. As we know, the Jewish community, since more than 5,000 years, they are convinced that their Messiah will return. So every big living religion today still has this expectation of return of someone. Now, obviously, not every religion can be right. I'm afraid they are all wrong.
Okay.
There is neither Jesus, nor Mahdi, nor Messiah coming, simply extraterrestrials. And I suggest they are here already. We are under observation again.
And so these extraterrestrials have returned? You think they're walking among us? Do you think they're going to make an elaborate return that is a public display of...
At the moment, since 2 or 3 decades, we are under observation. They know exactly how we react because the gods created humans according to their own image. They know our feelings, they know our way of thinking, so they don't want to shock us. They would have the technology to show up of a sudden before a big football stadium with 10,000 of people and all the TV cameras are there. They know exactly mankind, humanity would be completely shocked. So they make it slowly. They use 1 or 2 generations to prepare us. Once for themselves, they have to study our languages. What language are we speaking? What science do we have? What kind of weapons do we have? Could we be dangerous for them? What political systems do we have? What religious systems do we have? What kind of bacteria we have? You cannot just shake hands with somebody and then you are dead because they have different viruses. So they observe us. It's a scientific study for them, but also for us. In respect of us, they don't want to shock us. That's why they prepare us slowly, slowly. This will take 1 or 2 generations, and we are in the middle of it. The time has changed. In German we say, der Zeitgeist, the spirit of time has changed.
I love that spirit of time,
Yeah.
Yes. And so what reason would the extraterrestrials have to want to come and land on our planet and interact with us?
That's very complicated to explain it. I think I know it. I'm not sure, of course, but I think I know it. The goal of the universe is to spread out intelligence all over the universe. Imagine we would have in the universe that we have billions and billions of stars. We would have one form of intelligent life on one planet somewhere out there. Now this lonely being, intelligent, has no contact with nobody, has no information to change, cannot ask somebody, is the universe at the end of your place? How does it go? So you need intelligence all over the universe. You have to spread out intelligence to construct a net of communication. That's what they're doing. They are spreading out intelligence all over the universe. We are part of it.
So it's a network of intelligence and a way to connect all of these different forms of intelligence
And
throughout the galaxy,
yeah,
universe.
you know, I just remember some 40 years ago I was on a TV show here in the United States, and left to me was Professor Dr. Carl Sagan sitting. He was a brilliant astronomer and astrophysics, and on the other side was Alan Hynek. He also was an astronomer. Now Hynek thought it is possible that UFOs do exist, while Sagan said, no, this is all nonsense. UFOs do not exist. And then Sagan said to Hynek, and I was sitting in the middle of it, but listen, Carl, if we would be under observation, if there would be something intelligent out there, they would have realized that we are intelligent too. Since long time, they would have taken diplomatic connections with us. And then Hynek says, dear Carl, we don't make diplomatic connections with chickens. That's the situation.
So up to the recent times, what do you make of this hollowed out, cylinder-shaped asteroid that some are predicting is some kind of spacecraft with beings inside, and they have come into our atmosphere?
What asteroid?
This has been captured on film by NASA, and it is an ice-covered, long cylinder-shaped asteroid that has come into our atmosphere, and many believe it is a hollowed-out asteroid that is now being used as some sort of space
Yes,
craft.
but this so-called asteroid has left again. He passed our solar system and our Earth in a distance of about 34 million kilometers, and in the meantime has left our solar system again.
Okay.
But we have other problems here in our solar system. You know, between Mars and Jupiter there is what we call the asteroid belt. These are about 800,000 stones, small ones like footballs, or very big ones. The biggest of the asteroid is called Ceres. Ceres has a diameter of about 750 kilometers. That's quite a little moon, quite an object. And your people, NASA, the United States, has sent a space probe to Ceres, to this asteroid. That was on the way for many years, and now we received wonderful pictures from the surface of Ceres. And there are things which are not normal. On Ceres, for example, there is a mountain, just isolated. There's no other mountain, and the mountain has some scratches, white scratches. We don't know what it is, as if somebody would have scratched the mountain up to take some raw material. We don't understand it. And then we have a clear picture of Ceres where there is a rectangular made out of stone. Now Ceres is a dead planet. There is no atmosphere. There is nothing. We humans were never in our life on Ceres. But there you find artificial stuff like a rectangular in stone. So if we were not there, somebody else must have been there. The question is who and when, why, etc. So we have problems in our solar system.
Yes. I understand you have your recent book. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, God. Chariots of the Gods, that was 50 years ago. And now I have the sequel of Chariots of the Gods with the title, The Gods Never Left Us. I confront different scientists with the question, do you believe in UFOs? And many of these brilliant people, really brilliant people say, yes, definitely. We know we are under observation. We know it on radar, we know it with different meanings. somebody is out there and is observing us. We know it for sure, but the large public doesn't know it. So the question then in the book is, what about mythology? I'm a specialist in mythology. I know many mythologies, and in most of the mythologies, they speak first the gods have come down from the sky. Then they clearly say it was the gods who teach human. We were primitive beings, Stone Age beings. Our language was very primitive. Then the gods, the so-called gods, came and taught us. They say this is a bush, and this is a tree, and this is a river, and this is a creek. The names, the words are different, and this is sky, and this is the firmament. So we learn to speak, to differentiate the different things from the extraterrestrials. Also, they teach us in writing. The first writing, the cuneiform writing, we learned from the extraterrestrial. At least this is handed down in our mythologies, including Sumerian mythology. So they were the teacher long time ago. Without these so-called gods, I say, we call them gods. In reality, there are no gods. It's all ridiculous. It's all a misunderstanding. There is only one God. But our ancestors, the Stone Age people, believe these beings must be gods, so they called them gods. It's a misunderstanding. So we learned in the beginning most of the things from the gods. The rest then is our evolution. But these so-called gods, these extraterrestrials, always interfered with humans. We have not only a human evolution, we also have genes of extraterrestrials in us. And this again is handed down in the old books. Look, some 70 years ago, a shepherd on the Dead Sea found the so-called Dead Sea Scrolls. And one of the Dead Sea Scrolls has the title, the Lamech Scroll. What is written there? You learn Lamech was a shepherd, but he was obviously a very rich shepherd because he must have hundreds and hundreds of sheep. So sometimes he was for months away from his home tent, just looking where his sheep had food, grass. Then he comes back to his home tent, and his wife, her name was Batenosh, had just given birth to a boy. Now Lamech said to his wife, this can't be my son, because I was away too long. You know, because of the 9 months in pregnancy, it doesn't work. This can't be my son. But Batenosh, the wife, swears, dear Lamech, I had no sex with no one. No with another shepherd. No with the soldier. With no one. She cries. Now Lamech is believing because he loves his wife. And he goes to ask his own father for advice. And his own father is the biblical Methuselah, the one who has become so old. And he said, what should I do? There is a boy. My wife just gave birth to a boy, but it can't be my boy. What should I do? Methuselah himself doesn't know the answer and goes to his father, which now is the grandfather of the boy. And this father was Enoch, the biblical Enoch. He says the story, the family story. And Enoch, who was in contact with extraterrestrials, there are books of Enoch, says to his son Methuselah, go to your son Lamech, tell him the guardians of the sky have inseminated the womb of Batenosh without touching her sexually. There was no penis, there was no sex. They did it artificially. And Lamech should accept this boy as his own, in his own family, and he should give him the name of Noah. Because the guardians of the sky have decided to destroy mankind with a gigantic flood. But this boy is the survivor for the new human race. Now we all are descendants of Noah. So we not only have human genes in us, we have extraterrestrial genes in us. And all this is written down in old books, in that case in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and nobody knows about it.
So the gods have never left us because
the gods have never left us.
We have their genes within us.
Exactly. You know, every old religion, including ours, say the gods created human according to their own image.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yep. Very good. Well, I know you're very busy, Erich. I thank you so much for taking the time to come and chat with us on Lighten Up TV.
It was a pleasure. We can go on for the next hour, but I have no time.
Yes, I know. Well, I truly appreciate the time you did take, and thank you so much for all you've done for the last 50 years to enlighten us and empower us with all of this incredible knowledge.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Goodbye. Ciao.
Bye. Well, there you have it from the expert himself, who's sold 75 million copies of his books worldwide. I was such a huge fan of his books, and as I was learning more about this ancient astronaut theory, and at the same time watching Ancient Aliens, which of course he is a big star on, I became more and more intrigued. And I had this sense in the core of my being all along that the truth was being spoken, that we were part of a much greater cosmos, and that of course we were related to these beings who had come here from other star systems to intervene in the evolution of humanity. That we are all in this together, not just in this star system and not just in this galaxy, but in this entire universe. According to the Urantia book, there is a central universe, and at its core is the Paradise Core, this portal between eternity and infinity. There is this infinite sea of pure consciousness that is beginningless and endless, that awoke. And when this consciousness awoke, it had a desire to know thyself. And so it created a portal between this infinite sea and a realm called eternity, because it needed a beginning in order to create. And so it did. And this first perfect universe they call Havona, the central universe of divine perfection, where everything is in its original divine blueprint. And that surrounding this central universe are the time and space universes that the eternal children are projecting in an effort to know thyself through experiential realms. And this book says there are 7 super universes. And within each one of these super universes, there are many, many, many local universes. It says that we are on the local universe of Nebadon that is settled within the super universe of Orvanton. So you can see how expansive our creation may be. And of course, we are all interconnected as one big cosmic family. Greetings and thank you for coming back for the last half hour, and you're going to be so glad that you did, because this interview is with a world-renowned author and researcher who has revealed so much about the new human. Welcome, Mary Rodwell. Enjoy.
I am your host, Suzanne Ross, and it is truly an honor to be here today with Mary Rodwell. Welcome, Mary.
Oh, thank you, Suzanne. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. For over 30 years, Mary has been doing comprehensive and extensive research into extraterrestrial and extraordinary phenomenon that has been taking place all around the world. And she is part of an organization called FREE. Tell me about FREE, Mary.
Well, FREE is an organization that is looking at this in a way that in science we can understand it. Apart from, we all know that we can be multidimensional in nature, a lot of people don't know how to explain that in 3D terms, whereas if you have a science base that will allow you to understand it and give you permission, then you can say, well, it's all okay because there's science there now to show that this is a reality. So this is what FREE is about. It's actually putting the science there, but it's also collating the many ways people can operate in their multidimensional nature, right across the board, whether it's extraterrestrial encounters with non-human intelligences, whether or not it's spirits, angels, fairies, elementals, or whatever. It's all part of the whole, if you like, the whole matrix of experience.
And that is so important because it really gives a lot of validity to these experiences that these people are having with non-human intelligences. And that validates their experience as well, not just for them, but for others, so that they don't feel like they're being labeled crazy, or, like these experiences aren't actually real. So thank you so much for doing so much to validate the paranormal.
Well, thank you. And I mean, it's fascinating for me, but it's also very humbling, because the bottom line is, for most people that have these experiences, they are isolated, they're frightened, they're afraid they might be going crazy. Who do they talk to? Is it safe to talk to them? Are they going to judge them? So there are all these things that come into play as soon as you step out the box and you become aware of more of your reality than what is considered okay.
And I understand you are the foremost researcher on this area of the paranormal. Can you tell me how you got started in this over 30 years ago and why?
Well, I don't know about the foremost. I mean, many wonderful people are working in the field, but I think it was a progression from being a counsellor. I mean, I'm a former nurse midwife. I've come from a very grounded base, if you like, going into counselling. Counselling made sense to me because it was prevention rather than cure. If you can work with someone emotionally, then they may not manifest illness. And grief and bereavement, where people often had extraordinary experiences after going through grief of some kind. They may have paranormal experiences where maybe mum or granny, they see them or sense them once they've died. So it opened me up to the fact that we don't just inhabit a physical container, and when that dies, we die, we go on. And I went and learned hypnotherapy, where ultimately I found out people had past lives, and so there was, this whole continuum of experience. And then I got into this field where, someone walked through the door and said to me, there's no support groups for this. For this, people just think you're crazy, and proceeded to tell me about his experience going on board craft and experiencing marks on his body the next day, nosebleeds, and saying, nobody believes this, but my whole family are experiencing it. So, when someone says it's not just them, but the whole family, this isn't fantasy, this isn't hallucination, this is something very real. And that's really taken me down this huge rabbit hole since. A very fascinating journey.
Yes, and so all of the data that you've collected over all of these years, how many experiencers would you say that you have interviewed or given these comprehensive questionnaires to?
Probably now over 3,000. And that's forever growing, because I find with one person in the family, sometimes that we end up discovering siblings, parents, grandparents, and it goes through the family line. So you're looking at an extraordinary number of people, and I get contacted from people all over the world, from as far away as China, right through to Russia, right through to Alaska and South America. So this is a global phenomenon, and far greater than I think our surveys yet have indicated.
Now, I see that you've collected the data from all of these questionnaires from these 3,000 people. Can you give us an overview of the data, and what primarily are you asking them?
Just to qualify, Free has done nearly 4,000. I've done 3,000 personally. Okay, but what we've discovered is the whole misconception of all of these interactions as being negative and fearful. And it has blown us away, although I'd already come to that conclusion from my own research in my own organisation of the CERN. And what we discovered is that overwhelmingly, 80 to 85% ultimately found this a very positive, transformative experience. And a very small percentage, from 5-10%, found it very negative. Now that is extraordinary when you consider the numbers and what we're finding. And there are many other things that have actually completely changed the way it's perceived as an abduction or perceived in ufology, and that in itself is the most significant of all.
Absolutely. I was so thrilled to hear yesterday your partner Ray really emphasizing the positive side of contact with these non-human intelligences. Most of the people that I know who are experiencers, who are my friends, who are my colleagues, really emphasize the positive side of this contact and how they have actually received activations, if you will, that have transformed them into much more spiritual people who then become dedicated to inspiring and empowering humanity. So thank you for really emphasizing that, and then for doing these studies that really goes and proves that.
Yes. I mean, it was something that I'd already come to that conclusion before we co-founded Free. And the whole idea was to get some substance, academic recognition, and also to go through it through an academic protocol so it would be accepted in mainstream when you've only got your isolated own thoughts. And I mean, the whole thing that I was discovering as a therapist before researcher was that my clients, through their experiences, were changing in a multitude of ways. And these ways were everything from changing their thoughts about materialistic focus. They were looking at more of a holistic lifestyle. Many of them got drawn into healing. Many of them wanted to live a more healthy lifestyle and were focused on spirituality, more universal spirituality. All these things I was noticing, but I didn't have the backup of the data, which now Free is doing a tremendous job in actually showing the evidence of what I was seeing as a therapist.
Yes, that is so profound and incredibly beautiful to think that there are these non-human intelligences who are really dedicated to upgrading humanity, and that's truly the bigger picture of this. Would you agree?
It's certainly one of the major programs, and the way that I've come to that understanding is that, you know, those that have had experiences, the older generations, each time you get the next generation, they seem to be that little bit more aware, that little bit more awake. And I remember thinking, well, if that's what's happening, you know, when we get the children coming in that have these so-called dysfunctions, ADHD, Asperger's, some forms of autism, dyslexia, maybe others, we see them as a dysfunction. So why would this upgrade be a dysfunction until you understand that these may very well be different wiring, a different way of us operating, because many of us are living in a reality dysfunction, which means that, you know, we're told that unless we can touch it, feel it, see it, smell it, hear it, it's not real, when that is in fact a reality dysfunction, because we all have the senses, that we can sense things, we can have intuition, we can know things, we can have, you know, some can see spirits, some can be aware of energy fields and what have you. What is all of that if it's not real? And yet our box says you can't have those experiences. And what's happening, I believe, is our programming shuts us down from all of that. And what we're finding with the new children, because they are wired differently, we call that dysfunction, when in fact the reason they're wired differently is that they're not being programmed then out of their awareness. And that is why they are appearing dysfunctional, when in fact we're the old model, we're the dysfunctional ones that need to wake up and join them in this new awakening that I see and believe is happening with humanity.
Yes, and you talk about the new human. So these children that are coming in, they are actually higher functioning.
Yes.
They're functioning in a different way under a more advanced program.
Yes.
And in that, do they have higher capabilities then? And if so, what would those be?
What is fascinating, and I got a lot of information from those that had experiences about these new children being born without programs, and also the fact that they are harder to program because of the way they are wired, which is, of course, deliberate. And what I'm seeing with them is they have conscious memory of their past lives. So we'll talk about the other planets that they've come from. Some of them have memories of making a choice to come in here and help with the planet and help humanity. I was talking to a little 7-year-old only a week ago that was telling me that he is helping people to connect to their angels. And he remembers coming in from being a will-o'-the-wisp that had chosen this particular life and then being in mummy's tummy. And he also talks about going out astrally at night and going to other dimensions, and talks about his planet that's on the 9th dimension. Now, this is a 7-year-old child we're talking about.
Truly remarkable.
Okay, so, you know, where does that come from if it hasn't come from this very awakened soul that's coming in at the moment? They are everywhere. And I'm hearing them, I'm speaking to them. And this is what's so exciting and why I'm talking about the new human. We've talked about indigo, crystal children, children of light, rainbow children, and nobody wants to talk about ADHDs or whatever, because they're the dysfunctional lot. But actually, no. One of the gentlemen that I spoke to that found out he was ADHD at 50 now has relabeled that as always dialed into higher dimensions. That's how he interprets it, because he said, I always saw reality in an expanded way. There's your clue. There's your clue. And these ADHD children are being blocked and being stopped, when in fact we should be following their awareness and understanding that they are new programs of humanity.
There is one of our very powerful messages for today is support for the children with ADHD, to instead of drugging them, to recognize that they are exceptionally gifted and that they are here on a mission. Now, do you feel that these children are being sent here as messengers to support movement into a golden age? Are they here to help herald the old programmed humanity into a new golden age?
I think we all as souls have come in at a certain point to assist in that. Even the older generations or the older models like myself, we've all come in with a mission, partly to experience being human again and being in a 3D reality, but also many have come from other star systems, other dimensions. I was talking to a 10-year-old last year, and he told me that he came through a portal in the sun. That was how he came and incarnated. And they've all come in with abilities to assist this planet to evolve to a higher level of consciousness. They all know that, just like the little boy that said, I've come to connect people to their angels, because he interacts with angels and he talks about the different angels, even the mega angels that can go as far as the 10th dimension, he tells me. So he actually knows their limits. But they have come in, they have chosen to come in, and I believe as souls we've chosen to come in to assist this planet at this time, because we've all brought our awareness and our abilities. And these children talk about being educated on spacecraft, they're educated on other planets. This 8-year-old told me that she gets taught how to use her third eye and levitate when she gets taken to the planet. She's shown star maps so that she can decode them, and she was explaining to me one of her gifts was the elements, that she can control the wind. And she said there are other children that control other elements and what have you. So we're talking about an extremely aware species on our planet now, and just recognizing them and supporting them is going to be the most important part of what happens next.
That is so incredibly fascinating. So this feels then like a multi-dimensional galactic mission to come and support humanity on planet Earth at this time as we move into this ascension. Why is so much attention on so many levels and dimensions and amongst many different star races in the galaxy focused on planet Earth right now?
Well, I think there are many different explanations of that, and I think it's multi-layered. But I recall a 12-year-old actually talking about being here on Earth and leaving something on the moon that was to help with consciousness in another lifetime. And he talked about that Earth has been, at this point in its evolution, 3 times. And he said, but they didn't make it. He said, but this time, he said, there's a 95% chance that we will actually make it. And that was how he explained that we've obviously been through this process a few times and not quite got there. And maybe this time, with the support and help of all these wonderful souls from all over the galaxies and universes, have come in to say, now it's time for humanity to evolve to another level of consciousness. And that's how he explained it. So I think that's a pretty interesting explanation.
That sure is. And this consciousness evolution, then this is part of our evolutionary journey to advance from 3D to 4D to 5D human beings. And as 5D humans, how will we be different? Structurally, energetically?
I'll explain it, and I try and keep it really simple. My understanding is, and Dr. Lena Olson is a molecular biologist who's also an experiencer, and she calls these children letter people, because she's one of them, explained that she felt that and understood that we're separating into two frequencies on this planet. The low frequency people that want to stay in 3D, and the high frequency people that want to go to that higher level of awareness and frequency. And she said, and that's what's happening now. And if you look at the polarities of what's happening on this planet, it actually really looks like that. So some souls have said, no, I'm staying in 3D this time. And others are saying, no, I want to evolve to a higher level of awareness. And that seems to be what is occurring. And some talk about the new Earth. And I talk about that in my presentations and what the children understand of the new Earth. And what they're really saying is that this higher vibrational Earth is already waiting for us to join it. And we will be in a different vibration where all the things that the children talk about that they can do will be manifest. They will be able to manifest all of this. But so will we, because we will also be activated by their frequency. And all the activated ones activate more. So all of those that are ready, those frequencies are going across the planet, so that at some point, and maybe sooner rather than later, from my understanding, this will happen. And we will just be separate. But how that's all going to manifest, that's part of the adventure, isn't it?
Yes, let the mystery unfold.
Yes.
But the more of us that get online with inspiring and empowering and raising our vibrational frequency just by being the compassionate, loving, pure souls that we are, we can really help to activate the matrix and raise the vibration of the collective consciousness. And I know many of us are engaging in that now. Mary, if we can back up for a minute, I'm really fascinated by timelines. So you were saying that we've actually come to this point 3 times before, and now we're on our 4th try. Does this line up with ages, or how do the timelines work, where they're stopped and then restarted and we can try again?
Well, this 12-year-old, that's how he explained it, that we had reached a point where we nearly made this shift in that evolutionary shift. So I assume that we started again. Whether or not that ties in with Atlantis going under the water, for example, as one of the timelines, for example, and everything starting again, the deluge or whatever, people remember, when the Great Flood, for example, might have been another one. It's really hard to know if it's those things that they're mentioning, that when Lemuria went down, all these kinds of disasters where huge changes happened on the planet and we more or less started again. I think there is something akin to that these were when we shifted and started a new civilization and we began at a baseline again. And that's how we gradually evolved and became more aware and more civilized, supposedly civilized. But the technology is the biggest fear this time, because apparently in Atlantis that was a similar thing, that they got caught up in the technology. And I met a wonderful starseed who explained to me she was there in Atlantis when it went down, and explained exactly what was happening to the bird that she was talking to. She was someone who told me that she programmed her own crystal skull, which were like hard drives, as a researcher. So she said I would download into the crystal skull, and she said, I'm hoping my skull is somewhere because it has all my information from when I was in Atlantis and what have you. So these are the awareness of these new starseeds coming in. They're aware of their past lives. They talk about which planet they were from, remembering, and are often saying to their family, don't you remember when you were with me? I've got a lovely comment from a grandmother and her grandson who is saying, the crystal planet do you remember that, Nan? Do you remember when we were there and now we're on planet Earth and what have you? And she's saying, well, I'm not so sure about our incarnation on planet Earth. And he's going, no, Nan, it's great down here. There are many wonderful species, was the way he described it. But this is how they relate. This is how they're talking about their understanding of their reality and experience is not just here. It's whatever ties into those other experiences in other timelines.
There's so many questions I have based on what you just said, but yes, the aligning the ages. I've interviewed many Native Americans, and particularly the Hopis, who talk about, the 3 worlds, and that this last time around they emerged into the 4th world, and that now we're moving into this 5th world. So that very much could be in alignment. the star seeds. So what do you think about this idea that maybe planet Earth was always an experiment to be seeded with all of these different star races to see if in the end we could all come together and unite as one to move into this age?
I think that may very well be one of the programs, perhaps. But I think there's probably multi-layered programs as well that we're not always aware of. We're very good at simplifying everything, don't we? We want to put everything in boxes, but I think there are many layers to that, and that may be one of those things. But I have been, I've had children talk to me about, other dimensions where these craft will go into other dimensions and they will seed planets. And they will send technology through portals or wormholes or whatever. And so this is not the only planet that's being seeded and waiting to see what unfolds.
Okay.
So we've got this galactic kind of, if you want to call it, a seeding of new energies, new planets, new forms, all the time is going on. The 7-year-old that I was speaking to was talking about genetic engineering, and that she was taken up and shown genetic engineering not only between different species of humans, etc., and others, but plants and animals, and so they're constantly adjusting, changing, creating. So we've got all this going on for different outcomes all the time. So there's all these other things going on. So everything can be an experiment if you want. It's just us exploring our creativity.
An experiment in consciousness.
Absolutely.
And it's time for us to upgrade. Yes, and so it's very exciting to think of ourselves as multidimensional galactic beings, all of us probably encoded with DNA from many different star races, and we've all come together on planet Earth at this time to herald in this new golden age of enlightenment. Such a very exciting time. So now you were talking about this lower frequency and this higher frequency and this polarity, and maybe that we're pulling apart. So what does that look like? Does that mean that there'll be an Earth plane of 3D humans who wish to stay in 3D for a while longer, and that there'll be the 5D ones moving into another Earth plane? That Earth plane already exists, you were saying?
Yes, I'm quoting, this was a young man who was 16 when I was talking to him, a very aware young man called Zach. And in it, he was actually saying, but Gaia is already there waiting for us. So there's another Gaia that's actually waiting with a different frequency. We are moving to join that new Gaia. So that's the way that he explained it. It's not moving, it's just in another dimension.
So we're able to shift.
Yes, then we'll shift to that. And there, obviously, there'll be more experiences from a more multidimensional reality, us embracing and embodying that frequency and experiencing in that frequency as well. So all the things that we think are impossible here may very well be possible, and we may end up being far more creators rather than anything else. But that's part of it too, is the mystery of what is that going to be like. And the interesting thing is, right across the board with those that are contacting me, is that sense that something's coming or something's going to happen. Some call it an event, some call it just a shift in consciousness, and they're not quite sure what that will all mean, whether or not we're going to experience earth changes as well. Maybe for a while we're going to have chaos. But ultimately the fascinating thing is that we will go to this new place.